if somebody wants in, they're going to get in. You can't stop it. It becomes, what can they do after they get in?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the HIP podcast. Today is a version of the podcast we call Identity Breach Confidential. Identity Breach Confidential takes listeners inside the high-stakes world of cybersecurity incident response, focusing on the real stories and tense negotiations that happen during major cyber attacks. My co-host for these episodes is Jeff Wickman, Semperis' Director of Incident Response, also known as the Negotiator, and a veteran in digital forensics and ransomware negotiation. Our guest today is Tim Beasley, a senior incident response consultant and cybersecurity specialist here at Semperis, with a deep expertise in compromise recovery and incident response, particularly in identity security. With over 2 decades of experience in IT and enterprise environments, Tim helps organizations recover from security breaches, strengthen their identity infrastructure, and build resilience against evolving threats. Before joining Semperis, Tim was a cyber analyst, threat hunter, and lead investigator on the elite Microsoft DART detection and response team, Breach Response Group. Tim also helped form the compromise recovery security practice at Microsoft to assist organizations in their post-breach security remediation. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So, Tim, tell us about your work in compromise recovery at Microsoft prior to you joining DART. I think a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about how to prevent it from happening because nobody wants it to happen, to what do you do during, and maybe not enough time is spent thinking about what you should do in the aftermath.
Sure. When I joined Microsoft, I originally joined as a Premier Field Engineer, PFE. Specializing platforms and identity. I've been dealing with Active Directory and identity now ever since the inception of AD, so 25 years plus. And I also had a strong identity space and experience with PKI, so public key infrastructure. So I did platforms PFE for a while, and during my journey at Microsoft, I got more and more involved in cybersecurity engagements, whether it be proactive offerings for advisement, consultation, things like that. And then eventually I started getting more and more involved with engagements that DART was doing. And there's a old conference that used to take place inside of Microsoft called Tech Ready. It eventually evolved to Ready, right? But it was a big conference for all of us nerds to get together and learn about all the new hotness that was coming out from Microsoft. And one of those conferences, my very first year, so I had joined in November of 15, and then my first Tech Ready conference, I went to, it was in February of 2016, and they flew us out to the Seattle area, and I got to meet with a bunch of folks, including one Jim Muller. And the reason I remember his name is A, he's still with DART. B,
Wow.
He wrote and was one of the authors of the Pass the Hash white papers, if you've ever read those. And he and a group of specialists that did compromise recovery and investigations did a presentation on CR, or compromise recovery. This was back in, again, February 2016. That initial presentation, it just blew me away, right? And I was like, man, I want to do that. I want to do what these guys are doing. Some of the stories that they were throwing out about finding true 0 days, how one guy that did the discovery and the malicious, he was actually reverse engineering the malicious code, found a true 0 day, like literally per Jim, like threw stuff up in the air, jumped up out of his desk, and did one of those kind of reactions, right?
This is 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Yeah.
Early.
And yeah. And think about how far we've come in 10 years, right?
or gone.
that kind of planted the seed in me. So throughout my career at Microsoft, I started doing more and more cyber related focus engagements. Eventually I got asked to do this Architect Capability Accelerator, or ACA program was the acronym. Microsoft loves their acronyms, right? During this, the director, the guy who essentially helped start the cyber practice at Microsoft, asked to be my mentor.
Yes. Wow.
He asked. Not going to drop names, but he's up there, right? There's a well-known book that's kind of written about some of his things that I'm hinting to. That being said, he wanted to be my mentor during the AFCA program. And it was to learn how to become a cyber architect with inside Microsoft to, help streamline and how we did compromise recovery. They flew me out. They took 38 people worldwide out of 220,000 plus, right? Just 38. And when I was at that program, due to his mentorship and stuff, they were like, okay, we want to hire you immediately. You're number one out of everybody. My mentor took that. He was building the CR practice inside of Microsoft and said, we want you to come help. And we started this thing called CRISP, and we want you to be a part of it. So I was like, cool. So CRISP stands for Compromise Recovery Security Practice. So in order for me to do that, I had to transition out of PFE and join the MCS side of the house. So the consulting side. Did that, loved every bit of it. It was awesome. Met some really cool people, learned a whole lot. Within my time there, I helped develop the rapid ransomware recovery engagement that Microsoft offered worldwide. Led the worldwide boot camp on that. And during my time in CR, things were happening because Microsoft loves to just reorg out of the blue, right? Fast forward a couple of years, as I was doing compromise recoveries, they reorged. I kind of saw the writing on the wall. And during my time, because at the time in CR, right, here's what would happen. Customers would get breached. They would call DART, engage with DART. DART would come in and essentially paint the picture through investigation of what happened, what the threat actors did, how they got in, what identities were compromised, what was possibly exfiltrated from a data perspective, things like that. Painted the overall picture, with given the available data that's there. As they left, because the investigation was over, the baton got passed over to CR. It was now time for us to come in and evict the threat actor and help the customer recover entirely. So our CR engagements on average would last anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Whereas DART is like a 1, maybe 2 week thing. If you're lucky. I mean, they're in and out, right? CR, we're with you for a while. Sometimes months in some of the engagements that we did. So it was a lengthy process. And during my time at CR, once the reorg started to happen, I was like, okay, something's up. Something's going to change. And the director of DART reached out to me at the time and was like, hey, heard you might be interested in coming over to DART. Why haven't you joined DART yet? Are you afraid? I had to laugh. Classical DT moment there.
This is the Back to the Future Part 2. What are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so did the process, went through the interviews, joined DART. And while I was joining DART, CRISP was inadvertently kind of just being written away. Ultimately, Microsoft stopped doing the official compromise recovery engagements from what they used to be, right? They had some like little offerings, the CR folks in the CR team. So some of us joined DART Others kind of went and did MCS stuff, but be that as it may, became Dart. Microsoft stopped. Dart was like, hey, you know all this stuff about CR. We don't have anybody doing CRs anymore.
Right.
And so I was like, all right. So they originally brought me on to do like forensic hunting, but because of my background, I helped form and bolster what we call tactical administrative control, or take back.
Mm.
And essentially it's a small version of a CR, very, very quickly done. Because remember what I said, Dart is there 1, maybe 2 weeks, right? If ransomware is involved, either we're on site or they were on site, right? Or we're doing things remotely. Ever since COVID happened, before COVID, Dart traveled 350 days out of the year. Excuse me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nuts. Like back to back to back to back, just away. That was a big reason I ever joined Dart. I got a family, can't be on the road that long out of the year, right?
Right.
So when Dart asked me to kind of help revamp how they did containment, or actually introduce containment, because Dart just sit there and hunted, right?
Right.
I started building some plans, processes that we all integrated collaboratively inside of Dart together, right? Those of us infrastructure specialists on the team, we all got together, pulled up created some really cool playbooks for both on premises and in the cloud, what to do from an Azure perspective as well. And yeah, like it was a quite a journey in introducing that, because it kind of flipped Dart on its head, because they didn't know what to do when it came to that kind of stuff, right?
But as an organization, though, you would naturally expect them to actually help get you back on your feet and figure out what, to move beyond those basics.
Yeah, because the detection and response team, right? It was a response to the threat, but it wasn't recovery, right? I helped them introduce the recovery pieces of that.
Got it.
Yep.
So, Tim, given that background in recovery, what and your experience in all of this, what are things that people should think about if they have to build a plan today? Because again, this is not something you want to build a plan with as you're looking at the mess that was whatever crisis that you just went through.
Yeah.
If they were to build a plan today, what are some of the key things that they need to think about, and some things that maybe they haven't thought about?
Good question. All right. So from my perspective, since I'm an identity specialist, everything in compromise essentially starts with identity, right? We always say identity is the new perimeter. It's true. All attacks, breaches, every engagement that I've been a part of, and I've been a part of a lot of them, hundreds, all start with a compromised set of credentials. It becomes, what can those set of credentials access? What do they have control over? And then where do they lead, right? Are they able to access other devices? And on those other devices are credentials that have higher privilege. Are those exposed on those lower devices? Because threat actors will do this. Vast majority of the attacks happens. This is what happens. Threat actors, phishing KFA, social engineer their way in. I need my password changed, right? I'm so-and-so, I need my password changed. Some will even SIM swap. They'll go into like T-Mobile or AT&T, not to throw them under the bus or anything like that, but to go into your local cell phone provider store. Here, Mr. So-and-so behind the desk, here's $100. Give me a SIM card that's got this person's phone number on it. Now I got multi-factor, right? They're in. The question becomes, what do they have access to? So from the customer's perspective, you need to evaluate what your users, your end user base, what do they have access to? What permissions do they have? The other biggest piece of this is making sure that those accounts that have privilege cannot access or be part of your normal everyday workstations. Okay. The vast majority of attacks, they'll come in, they'll target your everyday workstation, your end user. Let's say your end user workstation's imaged from like a golden image, right? Which means the administrator account, more than likely, is the same password on all the other machines. The threat actor gets in, it harbors those credentials, boing, 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 boing. They bounce around, lateral movement, find a set of credentials that have privilege, escalate up. Eventually it becomes game over.
Yep.
All of it happens very, very quickly. Okay. And it doesn't matter how much firewalls, network layer security you put in, security products you put in, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's all identity. What has access to what? So focus there. Okay. So if you can harden your identity, chances are threat actors are going to be like, too difficult. I'm going to go someplace that's easier. That's one of the biggest things that I've learned over my years, right? Firewalls are great. You can prevent outbound communication, inbound communication, whatever. But anything an admin can do, an admin can undo. Okay. If you've got Active Directory integration, okay, since AD's been around forever, what is on, say, for example, let's talk VMware, hypervisor platform. If Active Directory, you log in with your AD creds to administer VMware, AD gets popped, they now have access to VMware, and vice versa, right? Potentially. Because if they've got permissions, right? Potentially, right? Just because one of the questions I'll ask our customers, do you consider your VMware admins as domain admins if they're running virtual DCs? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. Well, here's a dose of reality for you. If I have access to the backend data store and you're running a virtual domain controller, I own you.
100%.
So it's like, I don't even have to be a virtual administrator of VMware. I just need access to the backend data stores. Game over.
Yeah.
There's over 120 plus ways to become domain admin equivalent. And in compromise recovery, and not in CRs and in things like that, there's no way anybody's going to cover all the bases. If anybody tells you you're 100% secure at the end of a recovery exercise, survey says no way, right? That's just not possible. So the idea is to take the door that's open to your organization as it currently sits today, close it as much as you possibly can. You're never going to completely close it, but you create the smallest gap possible, right? It makes them try to pry it open with it becomes more expensive for threat actors to hit you, and they're just going to move on.
A great quote that I've said on this podcast before from the former NSA Director of Offensive Security is, don't be the slowest gazelle in the herd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one.
Try to stay a step ahead.
Yeah, and again, make it more difficult for your environment to be hit. And it's good to go through regular exercises like, red teaming or pen tests, things like that. But focus from an identity perspective. It's good to shore up the holes that may exist in like a network piece of it, or, maybe from like a security product perspective. If relying on your EDR and you think my EDR is showing me that, all my endpoints are good to go, they're protected, we're safe, then keep thinking that, pal. Threat actors are probably already in your environment laughing. So that's just the reality.
Yeah, 100%. I have to agree with you right there. Is in all of the engagements I've ever worked from an incident response perspective, the minute you think you are completely covered. You have a hole somewhere that you just don't know about. Pivoting on the EDR example, it's easy for it to say all endpoints are protected. And I actually had this in a case years ago. The attackers actually got in and disabled, or I shouldn't say disabled, they put an exclusion in for everything on C.
Oh,
So
I've seen.
literally EDR
Yeah.
was there, but it wasn't doing anything.
Yep. So one of the TTPs that so techniques, tactics, and processes that threat actors will use. One particular group I have in mind, one of their TTPs is to get in and start changing how EDRs either exist on the endpoint, meaning, or what's their status? Are they disabled? Right. I've seen them rewrite their code to where they've uninstalled the EDR solution and then dropped ransomware. Right. So
Yeah, they're crafty.
And what does it start with?
Identities.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tim, I got a question for you. What was your most interesting engagement from a uniqueness perspective around the identity?
Gosh, right out the gate. So I joined Dart. My very first week on Dart, I got involved with, I can't obviously tell you who it was.
Of course.
Let's say high 3-letter governmental agency. There was, and at the time, there's a public article written on it. And if you search for this attack called Magic Web, and it was, if you search Nobelium and Magic Web. So
Nobelium.
Yes.
I just talked about them this morning. Yeah.
We're all familiar with that one.
They are, I'm looking at the compass. They're that way. Big nation state group. I had figured out how they hijacked PKI in their attack, which ultimately led to an ADFS compromise. They found some vulnerability in DLL that ADFS used before it was patched for this particular attack. And so because of my PKI background, I learned enough about OpenSSL within a 24-hour period that I was able to replicate how the threat actor hijacked the customer's PKI to dominate the environment.
To mint bogus certificates and that sort of thing.
I was able to craft my own CA cert, but chained up to their root.
Yeah. Yeah, the game over at that point.
Because then I can craft my own certs to do whatever I want, my own EKUs.
Yeah. So, and if you as a listener, I think the important takeaway here is identity goes beyond just Active Directory.
Oh, yeah.
We're playing in PKI, we're playing in certificates, we're playing in group policies.
So
There's a broad spectrum.
There's the big four that we dealt with when I was on Dart and in CR. Active Directory.
Yep.
Active Directory Certificate Services, PKI,
Yep.
right? Active Directory Federation Services, and then Entra ID Connect.
Yeah.
Those are the big four. Okay.
Yep.
If you can eliminate ADFS, hey customer, if you can eliminate ADFS, do it. Get rid of ADFS.
Absolutely.
Prioritize that.
100%. Sean, I think it's time for the game. We have a
Okay.
fun little game for this episode. I'm going to draw a number. Sean's got some cards and he's going to give a vertical.
I call
industry-
it flashcard fiascos.
Flashcard fiascos. And we're gonna pose the question for Tim on that industry and interesting tidbits about an attack in that scenario. And if I have any that I recall, I'll bring those up as well. So let's go with my favorite number, 7.
Number 7 is what? I can't see it.
Tech.
Tech.
All right.
Technology industry.
Okay. If I tell you, gosh, I can't even hit
Yeah, you can.
what they make. I can't even hit what they make.
It's all right.
No.
We already know the vertical, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. But
Well,
they
if I tell
make
you
stuff.
what they make, I can tell. Yeah, they make stuff. If I tell you what they make, they're gonna be like, "Oh, okay, I can figure this out." Who got
Yeah.
hit? Massive tech
we-
firm.
We haven't
Okay.
legaled up here for this sort of thing, so we'll keep it anonymous, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So massive big tech firm. Okay. Got popped, ransomed. It was credentials. They were, I'm trying to think. They were phished. End user got obviously compromised. Again, threat actor bounced from machine to machine, laterally moved, harvested privileged credentials, escalated up, came over, created some ransomware payloads. Oh, done. Started to spread like wildfire. Luckily, this particular customer had in their arsenal attack surface reduction rules, which helps stops ransomware. That one rule for ASR and the fact that they were using Defender antivirus helped kind of contain it. It didn't blast out. But the fact that they were able to stage it and deliver some payloads, they got us involved. Okay. We got in, discovered was like day one, they're not using tiering. Okay.
Yep.
So think legacy. It's not really legacy. It's still in effect today, right? I still push it. The tier model is well alive. So if anybody tells you that Microsoft tier model is dead, they're full of garbage.
It's just rebranded.
Well, so the enterprise access model is a little different.
Yep.
Versus what we do in our tactical stuff. So they got popped. We're starting to implement tiering and enforce it to where, for example, domain admins were restricted to domain controllers, period, end of it, right? That's their job. You're a domain admin. You should be administering Active Directory and DCs, taking care of the DC health. That's it, right? When it comes to the domain admin role, that's your job, right? It's not taking care of workstations. It's not building or creating servers, not maintaining the SQL database that controls the web farm, right? It's none of that.
Exactly.
So you enforce the tiering, you prevent credential exposure from a higher tier to a lower tiered asset, prevent any controller from a lower tier to a higher tier. We do all this very, very quickly and tactfully. Okay. So because you're moving so fast and because of who the customer is, this particular one was literally bleeding millions every hour that they were impacted. Okay. So again, big giant tech firm. We get in, we got to move very, very quickly. What happens when you move very, very quickly?
Stuff
Things
breaks.
will break, right? So as the double cherry on top, right? Not only are you recovering very, very fast, but you're also making a list of what's going to happen or what be potentially happening when you go full on production, right?
Yeah.
Because when we do things, we're doing things in an isolated environment. So when we do the cutover, things are going to break, period, right? Luckily, in this situation, their Active Directory database was not completely exfilled. It wasn't even staged, so we didn't have to worry about something like a mass password reset.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
that was, if I told you who it was, it would be like, I can't believe, because you wouldn't believe the dedicated teams they've got from a security perspective, who they have on staff.
So that was a lot. It
Who's
was a lot of
backing them?
TikTok people.
Not both from the private sector and the public sector. Okay.
Yeah.
Law enforcement, right? They're all in the bucket. They're all playing.
I think we
there's-
have time for one more, Jeff.
Okay.
You think?
Yeah. And I was just going to add on, there is no real
to
industry
talk
that's
fast.
exempt. Every organization is a target for attackers. Sean, let's go with number 3.
Okay. 1, 2.
Okay, I'm going to go fast so we can do another one. Going better public structure. Okay, rehash that first one I right out the gate from Dart. Right after a minute. We talked about that. Another one was, I can mention, right before I joined Semperis, they flew me to Nevada. I can mention it because it was all over the news. So if you looked at what happened in Nevada, let's say August, early September timeframe.
Oh yeah.
Easy to figure out. Yeah.
The hint is Nevada.
Hint is Nevada.
Awesome. Let's go all the way to the top, number 8.
Real quick on the Nevada one, I helped recover 40 domains in 3 days.
Wow.
And slept when?
Yeah. Financial set. Oh, okay. This is another one that was those things. It was bleeding millions of dollars, for rapidly, just right. Not full ransomware. However, they got popped from the cloud. Okay. Here's a good takeaway for those that are you listening. If you synchronize accounts from on-premises to the cloud and or vice versa, and those accounts hold privilege, guess what? Threat actors will use them to go from one environment to the other. All right. So this particular customer got popped. Their O365 account got for users that had privilege on premises. This particular threat actor did some recon, figured out who they wanted to target. In this case, it was an IT admin. Their account was synchronized to the cloud. Cloud's got a mailbox, phishing campaigns, right? Ultimately, the guy went click. Doesn't matter how much training you throw people are going to go click, click, click. So threat actors got in, made their way to on-premises. On-premises, this particular guy was a help desk admin. So guess what? They had a group that was part of local administrators on all the workstations.
Game over.
Right? Yep. So they were able to bounce. They found higher privileged credentials, escalated up, game over. Right?
Yeah. Business email compromise 101. And it doesn't have to end with just owning a mailbox. It can move over into something much worse.
Big bank. Big, giant US-based bank.
Yep.
Right. Well,
Absolutely.
one of my takeaways from this, and you've reinforced what we've talked about before, which is, and I always love to bring this up, is that the press, and I was a member of the press for a long time, but I don't think I was too guilty of this, they talk about novel and crazy ways that people got penetrated because it makes for good press.
Correct.
But the reality is most of them are doing exactly what you said. And actually, one quick comment, Tim, that you mentioned in a conversation that you and I had, but I think it's important for people to be aware of. You made a statement about initial access being table stakes. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Just what do you mean in today's world right now?
So from a table stakes, like initial access thing, it's like you always hear, maybe the story you'll hear is, somebody who dropped like a box of USB drives in the parking lot, or they positioned something for somebody to find, right? That rarely happens. At least in my experience that I've seen. What normally is the vast majority of the time is that the threat actors, it could be, people in high school, college, all the way up to, mega teams that are formed from a nation state side that are targeting this particular customer. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's from either like a phishing campaign, some social engineering tactic, where they are able to, in some cases, bypass MFA or take advantage of weaker MFA methods, like SMS, for example. They're going to get in. And the question becomes then, what does that set of credentials give them access to? Okay. Goes back to my original statements.
Right.
In some cases, they're very targeted. Like threat actors will do recon. They'll figure out, they'll do, search LinkedIn profiles, for example. They'll check social engineering, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. On certain high-level, C-level executive accounts in some cases. I remember one was the threat actor targeted 4 of the 6 top people at an organization. Where they focused all their efforts on trying to get their credentials. They won. They got them, right?
It takes one.
It all started with an intern that was an assistant for one of those C-levels. They're very quiet, right? They're not blasting everything immediately. They're in one case, not one, but in some cases, myself, I've seen this. Others in Dart has seen this. Where the threat actor has been into an environment literally for years. I think the record for me is 6.5, where they were in the environment for over 6.5 years before they were detected.
Right.
Because they're very, very sneaky, and they try to be.
So I know historically cyber defenders have had the point of, okay, what are all the things we can do to keep them from getting in?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're basically saying is they're going to get in. They keep doing what you're trying to do, but they're going to get in. And so you need to work on the next step, assuming that they're in, not put everything against, no, they won't get in. They won't get in.
Yeah.
Assume they're going to get in and then work on the rest of it.
Work on that. Yeah. Change your mind to having that assume breach mentality. They are, if somebody wants in, they're going to get in.
Okay.
You can't stop it, right? It becomes, what can they do after they get in?
Got it. Well, Tim, this has been great. And Jeff, of course, sort of my takeaways from this, and I'm curious about yours, Jeff. My takeaways are we're back to what I call eat your vegetables, right? Do your basic security practices. Administrative tiering is still alive. Limit and control administrative rights and what you log into. What about you, Jeff?
For me, it's be prepared. Like Tim mentioned, and like you mentioned, they're going to get in. They're going to move to the next level. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to be loud when they do it. They're going to be doing it sneaky and slow to make it harder. But you have to practice and you have to prepare for that next step because it's going to happen. And you don't want to, like you said in the beginning, you don't want to try figuring out your IR plan in the midst of an IR.
No, practice, right? Assume breach, go through exercises, go through recovery exercises, pretend that your domain controllers are all down. What do? Right? Yep. What happens if VMware's toast? If you're using that, which most people are, if you've got things like password vaults, CyberArk is a good one. Password vaults are great. They can do a lot of cool stuff, but at the end of the day, they don't really protect against pass the hash. It's just reality. So as a threat actor, if I get a hold of the hash, even though it's controlled by, let's say, CyberArk, I can still do nefarious stuff within that window, right?
Right.
Yep.
So you want to make sure that you have plans in place for different scenarios. Ransomware is a good one. What happens for, email, what happens for data exfil, right? There's only certain things you can do. But from a networking perspective, again, audit your identities, your permissions, your roles, what you have control over.
Yep.
Right. Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Tim. This has been great. I knew we were going to have fun on here. I like the flashcards. We'll have to see if we can resurrect that in the future some way.
Absolutely.
And thanks for listening in to the Hybrid Identity Protection Podcast, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.